absolutely. And that's a conversation that's been happening for thousands of years in schools. Aristotle or whatever tradition you think around the world has been having that conversation.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because you're valuing the strength of the student, right? If they know, if they're capable of doing something like that, obviously that there's some sort of inclination there, but they're using it in the wrong way. At the same time, a young person who has access to something like that, and a high schooler, like they do pranks. That's kind of part of being that age. So, it obviously is something that we see and can see. It's interesting. I was going to mention. I don't know if you heard about. There's an AI student bill of rights that I guess
Great
might
call.
be adopted. Might be adopted by schools. Is pretty interesting. So I definitely
Hey,
you should
that's a great
definitely
call.
read that.
Yeah. And you see, this
Yeah.
changes things because, I mean, just the nobody would ban Google in a school, or you might want to ban it for parts. I have no problem with you're putting everything away for a period, but all in all, you're not going to ban a search engine. You're not going to ban a spell
Right.
check. You're not going to ban these things that are just silly. So same thing with AI. We got to use it. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's
like
about
honest. Go
balance and
ahead. Yeah.
appropriateness, right? A balance and appropriateness, right?
Age appropriate, sure. For the most part, 10-year-olds don't need in school to go on a lot of this tech. It's great for them to learn a lot of social skills and act out the stories and all those lessons and just wonderful, wonderful things to do. They don't need tech. But
Yeah.
throughout the day, when they're at home or other things, why not use the tech instead of just they sit the doom scrolling, right? The kids all call, whenever you're doing they catch those habits, and those are the kind of the skills that now they know. They catch each other doom scrolling, which is very different than engaged. Are
Yeah.
you passive or are you engaged? And those are great conversations that now we have, and I think that's what you're getting at too with students. So,
Yeah. Absolutely. So excited to have you here today.
yeah, thanks for having me, Bruce.
For sure. So I must say that your journey in education is very unique. From building successful college admission ventures to leading Solo Quest. Could you start by introducing yourself and explaining your core philosophy behind Solo Quest and how you came to this more one-on-one approach to education?
Sure, sure. I'm midlife now. My own sons are grown up, and so I've been able to see them. And I studied adolescent development for about 20 years at the Stanford Center on Adolescence. And how did I get into this? When I was a teenager, I thought it was a good idea that you could apply to college online and even start to create databases or track people in training. I think at the time in the 90s, most people laughed at me. They didn't. And then it was simply, keeping track and records of this that got me in. So the big data in the year 2000, or before even cell phone or the smartphones, big data actually just meant you talk to thousands or a million people, surveyed them. And we were actually using online college admissions at the time. Or again, that's when it was being introduced, right? Late 90s, 2000. Take it 25 years later, at the same time, we were doing individual, the one-to-one. So I've done both all along. So I can talk big data, lots of students, patterns across states or countries of education systems, but also the custom built one-to-one individualized attention, which is Solo Quest, which has become so popular now. So yeah, does that kind of help where we're here? So people like me for both. I do a lot of advising or editing of either curriculum or research, a lot of studies, professor style university, and then a lot of kind of training of teachers and counselors who advise this one-to-one with students.
Yeah. So talking about Solo Quest, can you explain a little bit? Because I know in our previous call, it was really exciting to learn about how different it is from traditional schooling. Can you just kind of, give some examples like you gave me before, how different it is?
So a few. Let's do this little practice intake.
Let's
So
do it. Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, so any age, but especially pretend you're a high school student here, right? So any high school, and when people think of high school, they're probably thinking in California, the United States, grades 9, 10, 11, 12, right? High school. So you're coming in for admission or enrollment in Solo Quest High School. Hey, nice to see you. And you can be with your parents, or you're a 16-year-old kid here. Tell me a little bit more about you. What do you do? What brings you here? Like what's interesting to you?
Outside of school, I'm a runner. I like to run. I do races. I like to play soccer. I'm a big writer, really into poetry. Anything else you need to know?
You're interested in running, some poetry. Tell me about what have you done with poetry? What do you like to do with poetry?
Yeah, I write poems, I perform them, I help others, kind of find their voice. I've had different clubs and stuff, with my friends and other people in the community. So I like
Oh,
helping people write poetry and I like to write it myself.
great, great. And we're going to come up with a couple other questions for a typical 16-year-old, and this is what we ask, but any adult can ask any teenager these questions. But do you work, and what do you do for work?
Oh yeah, right now, this is my first job. I'm just helping out at a pizzeria.
Yeah, yeah, all right, right. Great. Restaurant work and probably minimum wage, right? And what do you like about the work? Tell me about what do you do at the pizzeria?
I just help with, the oven, help make the pizza pies, clean up just help run the restaurant. I mean, the money's good. It's nice to have a little extra money while I'm still living at home.
And what are you learning while you work? What's something you learn?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I didn't expect this when I started working, but I would say just working with people, like, outside of school, working with people, like face to face with the public, people that I haven't met before, how to deal with them if an order goes wrong or something like that. So I've definitely learned some skills in that area.
Yeah, customer relationships, right? That's a great skill. So, and let's talk about a couple goals. Let's say in 5 or 10 years, what are some goals of yours? Like, what would you like to do?
5 or 10 years, so be like in my
So you're
20s.
25, 30 years old.
Yeah. Hmm. I'm really interested in being an entrepreneur. I'm really interested in like building businesses, having the freedom. That's something that, especially nowadays, I think is a lot more possible to explore. So I don't know. I would like to have some sort of business. I know the things I'm interested in. I don't know if it'll necessarily be in those areas, but I think entrepreneurship.
Great, great job. And just to fill out life at 25, what are two other things you might want to be doing when you're, in 10 years?
Yeah, when I'm 25. I haven't been asked this. I haven't been asked this before, so I like the question, but it's a little hard. I think I would just really. I think the freedom is really important to me. Like living on my own, and just having financial freedom as well. That's another reason I think entrepreneurship appeals to me. I'd like to also live in an area where it's not too cold. I don't really like the cold, so I think freedom to choose that, and just be healthy. I think healthy and always learning.
So, and here's the next step as a school. Well, we're here to help you get there. How are you? And so our next step in my last question for you in this, mock interview, you've seen how Solo Quest intake students. We would now ask you as a 16-year-old, what are you doing to get there? How are you going to get there? Let's say, again, you want to live in Miami and own your own business? Great. Or, we can do that kind of thing. How are you trying to get there right now? What are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, as I'm working, I'm saving up some money. So, I learned a little bit about like finances and saving and the percentage I should be saving and high yield savings accounts. So I'm doing that to prepare. And then also just working, like I said, getting the people skills I think is helpful, especially, in entrepreneurship. And then, I mean, I think my next step could be maybe researching where I want to live, but I haven't gotten there yet.
Hey, great idea, great. And any college plans or career plans, like a certificate?
Yeah, college. I thought about, because I want to live in a warmer place, I've looked into some schools, you know, in Florida, also in California. So, it's kind of different regions, but um, I'm considering that in my college plans as well. But I haven't started applying yet.
Yep. And common entrepreneurship is people don't think about even a real estate agent, which has a certificate, or if you want to own a mechanic shop, or even people don't even think about a dentist who owns a dentist office is an entrepreneur there. But they all have certificates. So are there any certificates that you'd get to be an entrepreneur? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought about it in terms of like what to study. I thought about studying, in a business school, but I never actually thought about, getting a certificate outside of that. I know Coursera offers different certificates, so maybe that's an option.
great, you're well on your path, and even working at the pizzeria is a great step. And our job here is to get you, there, especially at like 18, right? Because when you're 18, you can usually pass an exam somewhere. I'll break out a character a bit, but now we can carry on a natural conversation, between us. But this, we'd also talk to teenagers, their parents about this. But I think that's part of what you saw was kind of revolutionary. Like, oh yeah, like the conversation that so many teenagers just don't have, which means
Yeah.
all these adults are not having that conversation with teenagers. So that's a good way for us to kind of give an example of look, this is what you ask a teenager. Now we have a very different school because of
Yeah,
it.
yeah. What one thing I noticed, and this really segues nicely into my next question, is that you focused on, I mean, this my 16-year-old self, my 16-year-old
Yeah,
persona. You focused on my strengths and my interests, and I thought it was really interesting too how you asked me like, well, how are you getting there? Because as you noted, I think that at least, and I can think back to my high school experience as well. I only really had this conversation I think once or twice my junior year in high school when we were getting ready to apply to colleges with with the college counselor. So it wasn't something that we had prior or prepared for prior. So that makes me wonder. And now thinking about students with diverse needs, you had mentioned working with students on the autism spectrum or students with cancer. How does focusing on a student's strengths and their current skill set transform the learning experience versus in traditional education?
great question. Let's give some examples. People are calling these profiles or archetypes. I'm careful about archetypes, but when you think these, and even special needs, look, we can put people in boxes, but even further than that, it's one-to-one customized, individualized. The difficult part with that and how we do it. So when we say that, I'll give lots of examples, but we take each student because each student's combination of interests make him what he does. So, okay, a couple examples. Uh, if you were to walk with me earlier today, we were at the racetrack. Right. These are 17, 18 years old living their dream. And when we say the racetrack, yes, it is a 3.5 mile racetrack, and there are Porsches and Mustangs and whatever. And our students are out there, in this case, waving flags like they're safe. That's their job. That's their job. In terms of school, yes, I don't go on the race. I mean, I was see them, but school is more, the time off that racetrack, but they're getting paid for that, and the students are working. Now, nobody knows if they have autism. That kid knows every single engine as it hums by. So when I respect the student and you say his interest, for me, or maybe you, it's much louder. Standing by cars going 100 miles an hour with that noise alone would drive me nuts. Like, I'm scared, but this kid's in heaven at every point
Sure.
of that, right? And in terms of when you walk by afterward, when it's quiet, he knows every single engine, every single car, every part of it. Now, the teacher in that case tells the 8 students, look, You are all experts at the engine. Most of what we're going to do this weekend or this week at the track is learn social skills and following through to make sure that your budget is accurate and you follow through with your budget or your numbers were right for your gas and the story you tell and you publish and you get your English credit. They
That's
don't think
super interesting. Yeah, yeah.
so.
So
They don't
those
think
are
they're in
like,
school. Yeah, ask. But yeah, go ahead. That's a
yeah,
great
that
example.
so
Ask.
yeah, yeah. And so this was something that was super interesting to me too, that I hadn't really considered a reality before in terms of this existing in education. That you mentioned that a student can publish something and that counts towards um, credit. So how are you able to sort of build that model and because I know backing up, right, you've worked with in partnership with colleges for a long time. So how can that become a reality? Like just for people watching, right, who work in education or have students who are or have children who are college age or what have you. Like how is that a possibility?
Okay. Very many some words people don't like to use necessarily, but nowadays it was common, but path or track, what people understand when you go on a campus, it's mixed. So you have people going all sorts of places. But the college bound, like in a state, most states, but California, the top 9% of the graduating class are guaranteed in the University of California.
Okay.
So now that starts to and then the top 25% into the Cal State. So that's the difference between UCLA, UC Berkeley, and something would say San Francisco State or Cal Poly, they call it, but that's San Luis Obispo, California Polytechnic University. So, and what that I say that because people don't even think about Polytechnic, but when you actually use this, yeah, our agriculture students are going to a Polytechnic and A&M, like these kind of tags we see, but that's a first part. And no offense, but and what happened when I say no offense, like most people don't want to be farmers, but no offense to people who can't be farmers because there's a lot of skills there. You're fast tracked to that program. So when I say track,
Okay.
pathway, that makes perfect sense when you think nobody wants to raise pigs. I'm here in Napa or Sonoma and Napa Valley where people think winery, but no, that's a lot of work. And viticulture, like you get it, that's a fast track. Now,
Okay.
because it's a very different skill set. Well, so's everything else. Now, with that said, everything we do is to meet requirements like in California for the graduation. So you might have a track to get into a polytechnic or any college, but that means, and we match it, 4 years of English, 3 years of math, your U.S. history, government. Sometimes PE might be a graduation requirement oftentimes, but it's not a college requirement.
Okay.
So just navigating that system's a key component. Now I'll help you, but let's just call that the high school graduation, the certificate that says you completed high school. We help people get where they want to go. Instead of going to ninth grade and sitting in first period when the bell rings. Now, you get that contrast, but that's why people get so lost. Sure, 100 years ago, if you had to get a job in a factory, being on time to sit when the bell rings and sitting with 30 other students to learn whatever, that is what you would call a Chinese or a Russian system. Because they're good at it. And everybody's going to go through that factory and they're going to weed out to the top place. People would call it the Russian School of Math. And ask me other context about that, but that makes sense. A million people are going to enter that system, and 3 people are going to become nuclear physicists.
Right. Yeah.
Now, in this
remember.
system, people are going to do whatever, right? The kid that knows every name of the engine knows physics. It's just he's not sitting with a million kids or the 30 kids waiting. No, he's actually flagging down the cars.
Yeah.
But ask that's a drastic contrast.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, they're very practical skills that they learn that are basically like equivalent to what they might be learning in the classroom, at least on paper, right? So this is part of, as you mentioned, the fast track.
The faster. And now, when we say something like this with these agriculture, there's certain sciences and statistics that somebody that's in agriculture just understands beyond nothing at age 12. And any kid can learn this in their garden or plant, their little table herb garden will teach you it. But it gives you that purpose for learning. And now they have it, and then that's the track. So a lot of times when you say engage, that's a big part of it, engaging that first. The second part is the credentialing part, helping them get where they want to go. So they still have to meet those requirements, but it depends on where they want to go. And what happens is most people go and sit in 4 years of high school instead of getting their real estate agent. And I promote real estate agent because we get lots of kids that take the certificate, they get it, it's a great 18-year-old accomplishment. They might even do the drone pictures for the real estate agent. They might not even sell a house, but they get a certificate, but then they can become a broker. They enter that system, so they become a broker earlier. And more importantly, they're actually working. like you get, and those are the skills. And when they're passing that real estate certificate, they're doing history and English that are focused around their interests. So when you say publishing their papers, they're not only publishing a homes listing, but they might be publishing the history of a neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Or school.
So they're active in some capacity in the career, yeah.
And that's how I'm super nerdy, or our teachers. How do I know? Look, I work across states and read these individual wonderful papers by a 16-year-old who piqued their interest because, they like poetry and they like soccer. Let's go do an exploration. Let's find the history of soccer in your county and poetry. Find out where all the poetry happens in your county. Go to the library, and then that's going to be a 1-month project. Next month, go find the history of soccer in your county. Who's the best soccer player ever from your county? Those 2 projects alone get you going somewhere. You get those standards of any of those sports have integration, just like baseball with the Jackie Robinson story. Oh, wow. You mean certain cultures have been playing cricket and soccer or football or whatever you want to call it for years? Yeah, nobody, whatever. In that part, what part of town? Yes, okay. That gets you your history lesson or your government, right? So does that, and great. So now you see they're getting the standard credit that would be high school in these cases. But no, it's completely different because they're not sitting in the classroom. No, they're actually out. They're in Texas or Florida at the racetrack for the week.
Right. Yeah, no, that sounds like every student's dream.
And they have to look, you're only going to get, so look, that kid knows, I want to respect, and what you're seeing these examples are we really respect what that kid knows because he knows things I don't know. He teaches me things. And I'm still the school director and make sure he and his teachers, he submits his English paper. But even when we talk now, hey, let's do a conversation, ask more questions about SoloQuest. But now what you watch is our Silicon Valley special kids and AI and these things. Look, here's a whole bunch of students who know more about agriculture. They know more about car racing and auto mechanics or aviation. Well, computers. If in 1995, I was a whiz on a computer with database. I don't know anything about a computer now. And my students laugh, and you can tease me. My own son. I don't know. Don't ask me to fix your iPhone. And 3 of my friends that work at tech companies, sure, they know exactly what to do on that tech, but it's one of those things because we're not digital natives. So it's fascinating. The same thing. Car mechanics or like e-bikes. Man, my 15-year-olds know way more about an e-bike than any other trained mechanic. Why? Because that kid's always fixing e-bikes. There's nobody that's 50 years old who has had to fix an e-bike as much as my 15-year-old. Now that 50-year-old or 80-year-old, now the other part here asked, but connecting these generations, and that's even if you please. So let's talk. How do we do this? But ask questions about SoloQuest, and then we'll turn our attention to especially advising. How do we advise in artificial intelligence projects? How do we advise in cryptocurrency? Look, I'm not an attorney, I'm not an accountant, I actually know nothing about crypto, but we can advise in that project. So questions about SoloQuest, and then that role of mentors and advising too comes in.
Yeah,
But
yeah. And Matthew, that's interesting. Can you, because I know you mentioned that that role you play as well. Can you dig a little bit more into that? What does that look like, and how does it contribute to this greater vision of Solo Quest, and imparting those real life skills onto students, your advising role?
okay, and let's just say training advisors and mentors, and just sparking and just more we need more mentors. And we can go when you were a 16-year-old, or even in our own lives. The impact of mentors has a huge role. And what's happened is we've kind of disconnected from mentors. Either students are super motivated and purposeful, they go seek it out and there's no problem because they're already doing it, right? They're on an oil recycling program, and what they're doing is they're going places we never thought about, but because they're taking oil and making sure it gets to the right place and isn't destroying the environment. But they do these things and they get places and they have access. Most students, 80% of students, lack a mentor. About half students, and if you think trusting adults matters. So just let's go to your 16-year-old. One big impact we would have with any teenager, and I'll call out for adults to react. We tell every age, but you're 16. You need 16 people in your cell phone that you would consider trusted adults. And we get, some have them, most don't have 16. Mom, dad counts, but a lot of kids, it's tough, right? Grandma, and we just start connect. They will find them, but you just start making that the goal of every 16-year-old. They have 16 trusted people that they can call. And immediately you can call 16 people for help. Hey, I need $5. First off, you have a cell phone, you own a cell phone, and there's 16 people that will give you $5 and that you trust. And when you think of half of kids in the United States alone don't have that.
I was just about to comment. I would say that I can imagine, just thinking about like this, because I mostly worked with high schoolers. I can imagine that, especially like outside their family, I couldn't imagine, a teenager having that many reliable adults in their network. So is this something that, speaking about it, advising and training mentors, this is part of the work that they do with the teenagers, it sounds like?
Yes. And yes. So when you think the drastic difference between our schools but we're relying on, which is positive youth development, mentors. And so we partner with lots of the Boys and Girls Club. I mean, you think about the YMCA, like there are places that are wonderful opportunities for twofold. The young people, usually those are, the staff at these, there's here, people call them good and bad words, but they're great places, right? They're a great place because if you're going to a place after school, if you're in an activity, now a 16-year-old, I tell the kid, you should work. A 12-year-old going to the Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, any after school, churches often provide this. But when you think about what needs to come out of this, places for young people to hang out, and our message, you don't have to work when you're 16, but you should be working. Like, yeah, the expectation is a 16-year-old work. Now, that's the positive, negative part, but now here's the part. The mentorship comes in. Because now you have a huge, we've got mentors that do a UNICEF project, and it's whatever it sounds, all of a sudden you get a handful of adults that come in and work with a handful of 10, 15-year-olds that go out and collect money in their community for poverty. Now, they might be in poverty themselves, but now they've knocked on doors or they've asked people and they've gotten the permission. Like we work with that, but we depend on a partner. And we used to have this. If you look at 1950s United States, I'll give you and again, in the 1950s United States, there's plenty of organizations doing these things. Without question, it was just happening. And schools provided a nurse, a cook, and a school bus driver. And we're not blaming schools. I'm actually saying in society, you've got to look at what's tough on schools. Every kid used to be fed. Kids are fed now. It's just it's different. There was a cook on site. There was a nurse on site, and there was somebody that drove them. all things mentors could do, or, let's just, a soccer team will do, right? Somebody on a soccer team will make sure all the kids get to the field, and their neighbors will help drive them to the field so it gets there. And I'm saying these kinds of things because impoverished, there's no place in the United States that lacks these things. It's just people aren't doing them, right? There's enough people, there's enough places. It just cleans up. It's just a shocker for people to realize, oh, it's not that hard to help young people. I'll stop preaching. but you see that reaction, like you say, oh, we do things very different, but some of this is common sense. What did you want when you were 15? Well, probably a job, and somebody older than you to kind of say, look, ask some questions. But now we're outside of the traditional box of school, and we're open to conversation about youth development and every life. How are we preparing people for life?
Right.
And that becomes so much more about, like you say, yeah. And again, that's most of our life, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I definitely get this notion of like sort of like returning to the traditional sort of old, like in a good way, right? The old ways of doing things, having a community, a network. And it reminds me of, I definitely talked to micro schools and things like that who are,
Yep.
Also value those things and making those efforts and embedding them into the curriculum in the school as well.
And we combine micro schools. That's exactly what we do, because we'll take 5 micro schools and help them put them in touch, because look at all those small towns. They're all in the same county and they all have, agriculture.
Right.
And then they start learning from each other. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And on that note, Matthew, can you talk a little bit about, because I know Solo Quest, it's essentially like a group of schools together. Can you talk just briefly about like how that networking works?
So first off, custom built. So what usually ends up happening is in California, your local community college at age 15 is usually free. So when you just think of the local part, we just put the students who live near that community college in the same place. It's like these things exist. It's just like, wow. And there's 110 community colleges. So it's just the natural thing that anybody can do is start helping out the community college, because some of these places are dead quiet. And for good and for bad, look, if the whole college is still online, our students that are taking advantage of a lab at 15, 16, 17 years old have every advantage. Go do whatever lab. Again, what happens, the reason we have community college is to teach these things. So culinary arts. So when you think about we have more than 20 pro schools. What does that mean? Something like agriculture, something like culinary arts or food services. It's just standard for every 16-year-old to have that. Now, not to confuse things, but what you see, well, that student, like I said, at the racetrack, who's in auto mechanic, or he's actually aviation. So right, what that student, that example, he actually wants to fix airplanes, and he's working at the racetrack now. And similar, the Marine, if you can build a boat or fix a boat, you can pretty much get any job you want at age 18, because you can machine, you can plumb, you can do electrical. There's so many skills and what happens is all that takes is you got to be interested enough to show up and get real dirty. but without question, that's a different. And so the program you see in the traditional high school, they might be in special ed.
Okay.
All I've done is just erase that. So I've taken 2 schools, that autistic program and the mechanics school, and nobody thinks twice. I'm telling a great story about this. You don't want to put this student in 100 class of poetry. Again, and he'll pass he'll grade poetry. And again, because it's all focused on his whatever. You get it. But when so those programs, I'll pause for a minute. Do you see how those school programs, and we've been able to use technology to easily overlay that?
Like, yeah, what are some of those? Because I know, like you yourself, as you explained, you were very early, getting involved in that. What are some you know, how is tech involved in that?
So two things in inertia. Inertia matters, and people call it the learning curve. So early adopters, I should cite some of these people, but there's pioneering research. This is, if you look up early adopters, that's a common in business in introduction. So you've got early adopters, and then when we say inertia, that's part of the system. It's just so slow to adapt anything. And I'll point out, I want to help people along this conversation, especially every school with inertia. There are two department heads at the school that say no AI in any classes at the school. Now they don't really realize, and in part, putting a phone away and having a real life discussion or reading a real book is very important for young people to learn, because their attention span's been dumbed down. It's really hard to sit and read, but just sitting for 10 minutes or 20 minutes quietly reading is very important. Same thing, conversations without any tech is great. So I don't want to dismiss this, but banning it across the school, look, I take expelled students now, happily.
Okay.
Because it's like, look,
Yeah.
I just take that 15-year-old. Well, what were you looking up? Oh, like now you see, yeah. Now I expect you as a 15-year-old to teach me, because you're looking up AI, and you better submit by Friday your report on whatever you were looking up about whatever pornographic poetry you were looking at, like whatever. You get it? Like, it's terrible. Like when they say in a room or a million kids or a classroom full of 30, it doesn't work. But in this case, look, you're 16. We can't talk, and we're not going to share that. We understand that might be a felony. We might take a kid, the other example you get. I like giving ideas to people, but it is a felony, so don't do it. Don't repeat it. The student that, I meet him for the first time. Well, why can't you go to your other school? Well, I realize he used his AI to impersonate the principal and send messages to the whole school to say, no homework for the weekend. I shake his hand, that's a great prank. He is a felon, whatever. But you see how we honor that now? And what happens is that's a deeper conversation with the tech now. Wow, you can do that. You can't, the crypto students are the same way. I'm not an attorney, I'm not their accountant, but I can talk to you about ethics in crypto. I've never taught a kid to broker anything. I know, like, I don't know anything about it, right? But absolutely, and that's a conversation that's been happening for thousands of years in schools. Aristotle or whatever tradition you think around the world has been having that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Because you're valuing the strength of the student, right? If they're capable of doing something like that, obviously that there's some sort of inclination there, but they're using it in the wrong way. At the same time, a young person who has access to something like that, and a high schooler, like they do pranks. That's kind of part of being that age. So, it obviously is something that we see and can see. It's interesting. I was going to mention, I don't know if you heard about, there's an AI student bill of rights that I guess might be adopted by schools. Is pretty interesting. So I definitely
hey, that's a great call.
Read that.
Yeah, and you see this changes things, because nobody would ban Google in a school, or you might want to ban it for parts. I have no problem with you're putting everything away for a period, but all in all, you're not going to ban a search engine. You're not going to ban a spell check.
Right.
You're not going to ban these things that are just silly. So same thing with AI. We got to use it. So,
Mm-hmm.
and
like balance and
ahead,
appropriateness, right? A balance and appropriateness, right?
Age appropriate, sure. For the most part, 10-year-olds don't need in school to go on a lot of this tech. It's great for them to learn a lot of social skills and act out the stories and all those lessons, and just wonderful things to do. They don't need tech. But throughout the day, when they're at home or other things, why not use the tech instead of just, they sit, doom scrolling, right? The kids all call, whenever you're doing it, they catch those habits, and those are the kind of the skills that now they know. They catch each other doom scrolling, which is very different than engaged. Are you passive or you engage. And that those are great conversations that now we have. And I think that's what you're getting at too with students. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
well,
Yeah, and
great
so
conversation here today. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, and just to kind of leave us off with Matthew, thinking about Solo Quest and having these conversations about AI, and I know also in our previous conversation we talked about the cumbersome sort of very confusing, complex IEP process and all these different changes in the educational landscape. And thinking about that, what's your biggest vision for Solo Quest, and what do you think some obstacles might be in making that happen?
Okay, so you heard two parts today. The solo is the part when people think about this robust. We need a more robust sense of purpose for young people and adults. Just connected to my community. Just the fact that I like walking down the street, walking my dog down the street in peace and talking to them. Those are wonderful. Well, that's the heaven on earth. Like when we say these things. And so the solo part, the more robust, and part of that is you're contributing, young people and all. Yep. And having a purpose to have a safe place to walk the dog, and your neighbors' names and understanding. It sounds so simple to people, but recycling, 10-year-olds often love recycling. And it sounds simple, but it's much more complicated than anybody imagines. And it's a good project for a 10-year-old. And then it turns into walking in their community because they notice where there's recycling. So the second part is the quest. And the quest becomes, if we're going to talk about an 18-year-old graduating, we need 18 people that are supporting that person. And that's the part, kind of our call out. And even when people are, it's not that revolutionary. It's just, we need people of all generations to help teenagers and simply help be there for them. Go to their soccer game. That's what they care about. Just show up and cheer along the marathon that's going. Go to the library for the poetry event. And, even support, when people say support local businesses, some people really understand that and entrepreneurs. But the quest becomes, those are all the networks of people that we connect, Solo Quest and our teachers and advisors connect wherever people are in the world.
Yeah. No, that mission makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Well, Matthew, thank you so much for sharing all your insight. I know I really enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure all the viewers will as well. So thanks again.
Thanks. We'll be in touch. Thank you, everybody.